Hello, everyone. Could you believe that in the past, the only solution for a chaotic country was to have a dictatorship? I'm talking about Peru and the dictatorship of Alberto Fujimori. Peru in the 90s was a total catastrophe, not only for the already mentioned terrorist groups called Shining Path and MRTA, but as well because Peru was suffering the major inflation rate in all the America history. So just to give you an interesting comparison, Peru in those times reached 1,135% of inflation rate. That's comparable with what Venezuela just suffered in 2018. Peru was having an internal war in one hand, with the terrorism, of course, and a chaotic economy on the other. Citizens were tired of having to do lines every day for hours to buy simple products and to have deaths and threats every day for the terrorism. And that's why the political party called Fredemo ran into the presidency in his 1990s election with the biggest rider in modern literature, the Peruvian Mario Vargas Llosa, and his proposition to do something called an economical shock. In fact, this would let the inflation stop going up. But it was the last day to let parties to be registered into this election, and almost by a lucky movement, the party Cambio 90, or 90s Change, achieved to be officially part of the competition in these elections, giving introduction to a hard battle to Fujimori, thanks that he was the person leading that party. Hello, everyone. My name is Mosiah Carrasco, and I am here in this occasion to tell you the story of the last dictator of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, and with it persuade you to see the good side of an actual criminal with charges against humanity, including qualified homicide, serious injuries, aggravated kidnapping, and the charges of the 29 victims of crimes like Barrios Altos and La Cantuta. In the same way, it is important to highlight that all of this information has been gathered from original first and second-hand sources, going from the Fujimori's autobiography to cases where he was involved, like in the book called Vladimiro, Life and Time of a Corruptor, and Metamemorias by Alan Garcia. Alberto Fujimori was son of a Japanese couple who came to Peru in the early 30s. Their family were part of the increasing Japanese population inside this new country called Peru, and as most part of the foreign citizens, they were coming to work inside the agricultural area for the land owners, people that were possessors of Peru in those times where democracy and rights, and even though law was made for some lucky rich ones. Fujimori came to the world in a small wood shelter, perfectly cleaned and organized for the contrasted Asian culture his parents remained having as a symbol of their past in Japan. Fujimori always was a nerd. He passed all his time studying, and with the short capital his parents could provide, he made it to enter into the best schools and finally universities, where he graduated as an agronomy engineer. And as well, he won a fellowship to study and follow his master's in France, where he decided to master in mathematics. Long story short, he came to Peru after his master's, and after time in Peru, he was a rector of the university he was graduated as an agronomy engineer and president of the National Assembly of Rectors, giving him the contacts and as well the knowledge and the opportunity to do something unimaginable. Run for president for the 1990s election, and as explained in the party Cambio 90. Fujimori had zero experience in politics, and his direct competition, Mario Vargas Llosa, had it as well. But on the other side, Mario Vargas Llosa, as explained, is one of the biggest writers in modern literature, and by that, his contacts, social power, and status was something impossible to fight. And that's why Alberto Fujimori decided to do something revolutionary at the moment. He decided to use his academic power to go to all the universities it was possible, giving talks and stating that to the young people, of course, that he was not only words, he was actions. That was his motto at the time. He led Fredemo and Mario Vargas Llosa as the lucky rich ones, as I said, that had no idea about the actual problems that Peru was facing, and just led them as the elite of privileged ones that said that they had the answer, but actually they hadn't. So Alberto Fujimori started being present in every place possible, even though some of these places and universities were controlled by terrorist groups like Shining Path. Those guts to risk his life in order just to reach the people and tell them to not be afraid was highlighted in two occasions by the President Alan Garcia in two of his books, as well that all the voters. It was mentioned for that action because he had guts to do something that his competition was not doing. By those techniques and the casual and normal political fights and debates, Fujimori won the presidency. Now, I would like to ask you something. What would you do? What would you do if you're the president of a country with an internal war in one hand, with terrorism and a chaotic economy in other, adding, of course, the constant problems that a third world country has? Fujimori decided to do the following, taking one issue at a time. By that, Fujimori decided to first stop the inflation to keep growing and restore the economy and international investments inside the country. After doing that, take care of the Peruvians' nightmare, the terrorism, capturing and eliminating as much terrorists as was possible. And after making Peru great again, investing in education, health, and social reforms. Fujimori was taking action. Peruvians was noticing that, and Peru was appearing in international journals like the Promise and Miracle of America, and ironically, or on purpose, like the Japan of Latin America. And of course, this was because, in fact, Peru was starting over. The inflation has reduced drastically while the gross domestic product started going up, but plenty of businesses were doubting about it because there is still being a political issue, and there is still being one bigger issue, the terrorism. So, Fujimori understood that there was only one way to eliminate terrorism and political waste efficiently, and it was taking the control of everything, doing a dictatorship, and leaving politics behind and start taking military control of the territory in order to just eliminate the terrorism and eliminate the corruption. By that, Fujimori did his harakiri, he dissolved the Congress and made a dictatorship in order to complete his mission and his labor to the country. That was the point of no return to Fujimori. April 5th, 1992. Now, ladies and gentlemen, interestingly, his disapproval in contrast to other normal dictatorship was small. People admire Fujimori, again, for having guts, it's crazy, and to take the control of things like they wanted to. And this is primarily because people already trusted Fujimori. Because as remembered, he already solved drastically the economy of the country and was delivering safety again to all the citizens fighting against Shining Path, MRTA and other narcos groups that were located in the jungle of Peru. In fact, Fujimori and his particular luck made him being one of the most loved dictators, and this is because in less than 6 months after he dissolved the Congress and started his dictatorship, Abimael Guzman, head of Shining Path, and Victor Polay Campos, head of the MRTA party terrorist, were captured. Now, just imagine that in less than 6 months after he started his dictatorship, Fujimori did what Peruvian presidents couldn't do in one decade: have the opportunity to say, I stopped the terrorism. Following the capture of the heads, of course, the terrorism parties continued doing their job. But Fujimori knew about it, and that was part of the plan. He knew that even though the heads were captured, terrorism was still going on, but it will start reducing drastically. And it was only a matter of time till everything started going down for not having the head in the group, as explained. And it was like that. Going down first to Shining Path and having its last recorded attack in 1995, and after the MRTA having his last attack in 1997. That was part of the military operation Chavin de Guantar, one of the biggest operations in the military international forces. From 1992, there was only military forces taking care of the terrorism, and Fujimori started taking care of the reforms and economy of the country. And that's why he made a new constitution and plenty of projects inside Peru, trying to do something that was never possible to do, and is still being impossible to do, to be honest: decentralize Peru. Long story short, ladies and gentlemen, Fujimori solved the issues Peru was having, and even though he could have done much better in plenty of cases, he nailed it. And he solved the issues that, in a way or other, people describe as the only way. Now he's in jail, and as the majority of citizens in Peru, they forgot what happened and what he did. Now he's victim of his mistakes and how politics works. A million of good things will be erased if you just dare to do something wrong. That is what I meant with his point of no return. There is no black and white in history. And that is what I am telling you all of this story, and it's to persuade you to understand that someone like a dictator and an actual criminal was in his time the only salvation and savior of a chaotic country with no future and no return.